Guild Battles, the newest game mode released in Dragon Ball Legends, and I'm gonna be giving my opinion about it. For this video, I can only explain from my point of view, but I feel a lot of people will agree anyways. I don't have footage of everything because I kind of did want to enjoy it, and this video is kind of coded like a rant, but it's not, because I do have good to say. I also had some sort of allergic reaction, but that's whatever. No introduction, I'm Zakashi, you know that now. Let me get into my points. It's all gonna be listed by chapter. Participation. This is easily, if not the biggest, one of the biggest factors for this whole game mode. In this game mode, I did not play one guild war where there was more than 25 people in a battle, obviously per each side. So my guild never had more than 25 people for participation, and the other side never had more than 25 people. I think the max I saw was 24, and that's crazy. But there's reasons for that. The first thing I want to say is that the time slotting is terrible. It basically forces your guild to be in one region. In my guild, I have people from all around the world, some in Asia, some in South America, etc. And because of that, they all can't get on at the same time I can get on when I'm in the United Kingdom. For me, it's 12 o'clock when we decided to do it, but the other time slots weren't any better. 4 AM and 10 AM. 10 AM I guess you could say is reasonable, but not everybody wakes up at that time, or some people need to be places in the morning so they can't participate. And you can only imagine what times it is elsewhere. Some of my guild members, when it's 12 AM for me, which is nighttime, others, it was 5 AM, 4 AM, they couldn't participate, and because of that you won't ever reach the max numbers unless you have everybody in the same region, which restricts gameplay in general. I would have hoped they did a similar system like Clash of Clans where it gives you a couple days to fight, but it's really you need to get on straight away and make your moves from the time that your time slot is active. So mine was 12. From 12 you need to make a move within that first couple minutes, because if you miss that slot you automatically have a disadvantage for the whole battle. For that whole period, which is a max of 6 hours I believe, you are literally one step behind. So you need everybody online at that time sharp so that they can make the move on the first turn, otherwise you'll be one step behind and it could actually lead to you losing that war, and you wouldn't want to lose obviously. But here it's not discussing wins or losses, it's simply the process of how it goes. So time zones going with participation, it just doesn't mesh. But strictly talking about participation, the more numbers you have, the more likely you are to win. Now it's not the end all be all, you can still win wars with less people depending on how large of a gap it is. If you've got 2 versus 25, you're probably not going to win that war. But if we're calling a spade, in most cases the numbers are going to give you an advantage, especially if you all get on earlier. So even by the end of the war, if there was 20 people online on each side, if in the first 5 minutes there was only 5 people online in your guild and the other side had 20 immediately, they would have a major advantage. There's too strict of a time slot which doesn't allow people to attack, and I think that's a simple formatting issue of the mode, and the only way around that is for people to be in the same region or similar regions for people to mesh their guild members in. Otherwise it's not going to be something you can cooperate with. You're going to have members that unless they wake up at stupid times, they're not going to be able to play along with you, and I think that's pretty sad. I don't want to kick my guild members. I don't know how you guys' guilds function, but I don't want to kick my guild members just because they live in Asia and I live in the United Kingdom. Personally, I don't think it's that necessary, but that just puts us down because of the formatting of the game mode. It's literally just the template of the game mode. You can't get around that. There's also other issues that generally people would just have. With the participation aspect, you'd want to communicate. Now in my case, I'm a content creator, so my guild is able to have a Discord server, which is my Discord. That's fine for me, but in other cases the communication in the chat, it's not strong enough. I don't know why they just don't let people type their own messages. I could actually understand why they don't let people type their own messages, but it's a real setback for people that want to make progress in guild versus guild. Referencing Clash of Clans, they have that option where they have a lot of words that you can't type just so they can allow the communication factor, and that alone is a big help. Coordinating where you want people to go would make the biggest difference if the participation aspect was able to allow people to communicate effectively and not these presets. And on top of that, finding the exact preset that fits what you want to say is already a hassle, so it's just not the best. But overall, under participation, under the guise that your team is as balanced as the other team, and if you had similar numbers, it would be who comes on first. If you have difference in numbers, it's not necessarily who comes on first, but who has more numbers. And with a simple amount of knowledge, you'll be able to grasp the game and win. The accounts being used. Now there's some good in this segment and some bad, and I'm just gonna mesh it together because it comes under the same roof. I'm not gonna separate it, but you will understand what I'm saying. This game mode is based off a Tournament of Power, and Tournament of Power is very strategy based, which is actually very good, but with the strategy, it takes out the skill orientation to a degree. Now this game mode is knowledge based, so the more you know, the better you can do, but the knowledge requirement isn't so high that you're gonna have a wide advantage over somebody else that doesn't have the peak of knowledge you have. This whole section could just be countered by numbers, which is obviously a downside. But referring to the skill factor, if I talk about PvP for a little, in some cases you can beat people because you are better than them at PvP. Even if they have higher stars, better equipment, if you simply outperform them, you will win that game. And that's how PvP is coded. But with this game mode, guild versus guild, you're not exactly fighting people directly, so there's nothing you can do besides from build a good team and know how your team works to have an advantage in this game mode. Maybe you can see where I'm going with this. For people that have higher stars, better equipments, which would be down to them grinding, so I don't see having better equipment as a downside. Increasing friendship ranks, because that would give you more key recovery like in Tournament of Power, which is super useful. That's also not a downside because that requires you grinding and having the knowledge. But mainly the stars argument, it puts a lot of people back. I personally had a guild war where we fought another guild and we had good teams. My whole guild had good teams. However, we did not have the stars. Most of the guys are free to play and the other guild had less members, not by that much. I believe it was about 13 to 20 in total, but all of their members had a lot higher stars on average. I would say on average they had about 10 stars minimum, whereas on my guild some people had even under 7. So the difference was quite large. Because of that, we lost a 17 versus 13, which shouldn't really happen, but it happened. And just to add on top of that, something I'll talk about later, the items, we had more than them. So we stacked items, we had more numbers in participation, but the only other thing you could put it down to is maybe the way they built their teams. So maybe they had better equipment, which we also had good equipment, so it shouldn't have been that much of a landslide. The friendship rank could be a factor, but overwhelmingly, the biggest factor when building a team is the stars that you have on a unit. So I really think that was the biggest factor. You could also put it down to them having newer units, but in the reverse end, not just basing it off this game, we played another war where we had better stars than them on average, and we won that war. So you can look at it in both ways. In that war as well, we had about similar numbers in comparison to this war where we had more numbers. So the first war I was talking about where we had more numbers, let's just call that war 1, and this one where we had similar numbers but better team, let's call that war 2. If you're wondering how I know, you can literally check all of their teams if you go to the guild icon while you're in the battle. So it's no surprise to anybody if somebody has better stars than you. The same thing goes with the buff effects applied. So for a lot of people, if you win a game, the next one you go into, the next war, you'll be matched up with most likely a better guild, and they're probably gonna have higher stars. And the top guilds, the ones that are gold, how do you think they get guild points? Summoning is a very big factor for guild points. You end up gold if you summon a lot, and that will allow you to get more guild points. That's how you get into the top 100, by getting guild points. So naturally they would have higher stars. It only makes the most sense. If you're fighting a higher level guild, they're gonna have higher stars in most cases, not all, but summoning is a big contributor for guild points. So when it comes to the guild wars, you could say it's quite pay to win heavy, because the higher stars you have, the easier odds you have of winning games. It's not the end all be all. Like I said, participation is a factor, but your teams and everything that revolves around them, I think stars being the biggest factor, but the equipment you use, how you form them, also will play a part. As long as you have the knowledge, which is not exactly at a high ceiling, you will be able to participate and get through teams. But once you get to a certain point, it's quite out of your hands, which I feel is unfair, but that's my experience, and I think is very apparent at the same time, but I'm not going to force that onto everybody else's experience, or at least I shouldn't do. I genuinely think it's objectively the case. The items available. Now the items are actually pretty good. I just think they're too expensive. Most people wouldn't be able to use these consistently, and if they do, they won't be using a large amount, where again, you can imagine the larger guilds will be able to use them much more efficiently. There's two resources that will give bigger guilds an advantage, or the pay to win guilds an advantage. The first one being the guild medals. You can use genuine guild medals to get the guild battle coins, which can be used to get you resources, items in the guild war. And the second one being the legends ranking coins, which gives you the most guild battle coins. It gives you 500 for one, and that's a large amount. Now getting legends ranking points is through playing the game, so your overall activity, and as you guessed it, summoning is a big factor to that. So if people are paid to win, they would have more resources, more items, which gives them an advantage on the battlefield. They're overall expensive, expensive, and my guild, in my case, we didn't have enough. Or rather, it's just not worth it to spend your rush medals, your gold rush medals, the dual coins. The only things that were worth it were the training stuff, and they are pretty much gonna run out fast. So it's not exactly optimal unless you've already got a lot to waste. So maybe in the future item usage will go down, but it's much easier for larger guilds, so the ones with higher points, the gold ones, because they would have pay to win players in their guild, to just get an advantage in the game mode, making it more pay to win in a sense. I won't talk about all the resources in the guild battle coin shop, but specifically the legends ranking one, which gives you the most anyways, and the guild battle coins, because it's based on the guild you're in to get more points, which has a direct correlation to your guild battle coins. The other resources can all be obtained by grinding or just being a long time player, which I won't downsize for the game mode, but the other ones make it pay to win heavy, which is a bad thing for the majority of the player base. But if we're actually addressing the items in game, I think they're a good addition, especially the HP one, the movement speed, and the MP restore. Those can come in handy if you use them effectively, but it really depends on how you go about things, so that's to each their own. But with the item usage, I don't feel like they have that big of an impact, but they can be useful if you use them at the exact best time. But if they are going to be, because you can stack them and it's a whole group thing, so everybody can be applying them together, which is really nice in that sense, that would only make the higher level guilds, so the pay to win guys, have an advantage, which keeps the lower guys down, which is just overall not good. The actual gameplay. Now, if I'm being really honest, playing the game mode was super fun, especially if you can get a lot of friends on in your guild or just your guild members to all participate at the same time. If you can communicate, it's like all being in a rush raid boss and you're all just playing together. It's fun. It brought people together, I think. And that's a big plus. Overall, a big plus. The game mode's gonna need some tweaks. This is a pre-season, so don't be too heavy on them. I hope they can improve it. But when it came to actually playing, wow, I actually enjoyed. I was thinking of the craziest strategy, trying to learn the game. I was like a saggy on the battlefield thinking, if I do this. If I explain one of the strategies that me and my guild use, I led this charge. So what we did was, we made sure to get the respawn points and we did not rush for the base. This was in that same game that they had the star advantage, and I knew this. So I told my guild, we need to get to the respawn point on the left, we need to get to the one on the right, and as long as we all rush in the middle after the fact, they will respawn at the back. And that actually happened, but the only problem was the star difference was way too large and they still were able to take out a lot of our guys. So we were respawning a lot more than we should have been, simply because they had better teams than us, and that set us back. But thinking of strategies like that made it fun. Just doing something different, like the first time doing God Challenge, even though I think God Challenge is horrendous, doing something new for the first time can always be fun because it's a challenge. I don't know how much fun I will have with this long term, especially with all the other issues I listed, like the time zone, the way the game mode functions, it being generally pay to win heavy. I don't like those things, but bringing people together and playing games with people is always going to be fun. I just think it needs to be a lot more interactive in game, so they need to fix the chat and just let us speak while blocking out a bunch of words. That would be way more effective. And sorting out the template, so what I complained about, which is the time zone thing, I wouldn't want to kick members just because they live in the opposite side of the world as me. I'd want to be able to play with those guys, especially if I consider them friends. And I can imagine other people in guilds, they have so many friends around the world, and all of a sudden you can't link up unless you're waking up at silly times. Obviously there is time slots, but the time slots need to be either wider spread so that everybody can participate at the same time, or they need to change the way the game mode works so that people don't have to come on at the same time. Like I mentioned, Clash of Clans, people can just fight at different times, but that's a base thing. So maybe I'm saying the whole game mode is flawed in itself, but I think there's potential here and it just wasn't executed the best. But did I enjoy it? I 100% did. I think a lot of people are going to be quick to put out a guide saying this is the best thing to do, this is the best thing to do, but I don't think I've mastered the game mode enough. I don't think anybody's mastered the game mode enough to really say that this is the best thing to do, to put out a guide. And even if they did put out a guide, it's meant to be a guild versus guild thing, so helping people in this sense might not be the best strategy. And if everybody's using the same strategy, it's really just going to come down to stars again, so that's all an issue in itself. It's quite futile how it always comes down to pay to win, but it's a gacha game, so what do you expect? This is the preseason like I mentioned earlier, so hopefully they do make some tweaks and actually change the game mode. They shouldn't shouldn't rush it, they should take their time, and they did take their time. They waited 3 years or something from when they first announced it, and they just kept putting it back. Even in the silence, they were even letting us know. So I hope they take in some of the feedback from content creators, potentially people on Twitter, or even them just playing the game themselves and seeing what's good, what's bad. It does make guilds more useful, but the way they've gone about it, I'm not the biggest fan of. I'd say I'm more leaning to not ever playing this game mode again, or not liking this game mode more than playing it again. But for the experience, it was definitely enjoyable. I'm not saying I'm not gonna ever play it again, but if I had to go to one side 100%, I might go more to not playing it again. But just to end off this video, there's definitely fun that could come out of this, definitely some good strategy you can take out. They could even change up the map and put multiple bases to change the way the game mode works. I see this game mode having a bit of potential, I'm not gonna lie. But instead of just taking over TOP, if you're asking me, they should definitely just somewhat rip Clash of Clans. Make it a base versus attackers type of thing. You have to build a defense while also having an offense. There's a lot of ideas in Dragon Ball that already exist for this. If we look at Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, you have those towers you can shoot down. I could easily see them adding things like this for us to play and build around with, which makes it a lot more effective. That PvE layer could literally get expanded upon, and it also fixed the time zone issue while having all of these other factors feeling a lot more fulfilling. But that's all I've got to say. Let me know what you guys think about what I said in the comment section below. My name is Zakashi, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one, man.